Welcome. Welcome, you are listening to audio from the table. If you'd like to learn more about our community or donate to this ministry, please visit thetabletx.com.
Grace and peace, Table Church. Glad to be with you this week. So we are entering into the season of Epiphany in the church calendar, and this season is about the revelation or unveiling of Christ in the world, and it's a time to reflect on how the light of Christ kind of leads us forward. So the title of my message this week is New Wine, and our gospel reading from the lectionary is John chapter 2, verses 1 through 11, which says, "On the third day, a wedding took place at Cana in Galilee. Jesus' mother was there, and Jesus and his disciples had also been invited to the wedding. When the wine was gone, Jesus' mother said to him, 'They have no more wine.' 'Woman, why do you involve me?' Jesus replied. 'My hour has not yet come.' His mother said to the servants, 'Do whatever he tells you.' Nearby stood 6 stone water jars, the kind used by the Jews for ceremonial washing, each holding from 20 to 30 gallons. Jesus said to the servants, 'Fill the jars with water.' So they filled them to the brim. Then he told them, 'Now draw some out and take it to the master of the banquet.' They did so. And the master of the banquet tasted the water that had been turned into wine. Now he did not realize where it had come from, though the servants who had drawn the water, of course, knew. Then he called the bridegroom aside and said, 'Everyone brings out the choice wine first, and then the cheaper wine after the guests have had too much to drink. But you have saved the best till now.' What Jesus did here in Cana of Galilee was the first of the signs through which he revealed his glory, and his disciples believed in him." So I'm going to give you a kind of metaphorical or symbolic reading of this text today. Let me start here. I believe one of the great preachers in America right now is Pastor Brian Zahn at Word of Life Church in St. Joseph, Missouri. I will say, though, this hasn't always been true of him. He started out back like 40-ish years ago as a word of faith preacher, meaning a sort of Jesus wants you to be rich and successful kind of Christian theology. But then over time, he kind of evolved towards a more mainstream Protestant evangelical faith. But even that was like a good 20 years ago. So then after years of that, he said around his kind of mid-40s, he said something began to shift in him, a sort of a boredom, a restlessness, a holy discontent. He said outwardly, things could not have been better. He had a big old church and a big staff and a big budget and a big building. I mean, he was an American religious success story. But something about it all was just going stale on him. So he wrote in his book, Water to Wine, some of my story. He said, "I was weary of the tired cliches of bumper sticker evangelicalism. I was disenchanted by a paper-thin Christianity propped up by cheap certitude. The politicized faith of the religious right was driving me crazy. I was yearning for something deeper, richer, fuller. Let me say it this way. I was in Cana and the wine had run out. I needed Jesus to perform a miracle." Have you been there? Have you been in Cana when the wine runs out? Have you been in a place where the faith, the theology, the kind of religious perspective that used to resonate so deeply starts to feel thin, watered down, and just plain getting emptied out? And you're left thinking like, oh no, I need a miracle. I have. For me, it was 2007. I'd been a youth pastor at that point for like 4 years, but I was discontent with the state of my own faith and theology. I mean, I could preach a big game, but I didn't feel like I was really living it in the depths. Like, for example, I could pray for someone. Oh, may the presence of the Lord fill you. but I felt like I was barely scratching the surface of what that actually meant in my own life. I could say, oh, God is love, but then my doctrine of hell seemed utterly at odds with that. I could say, oh, the scriptures, they're pure, they're perfect, utterly without error. But then I avoided all sorts of passages in my preaching and teaching because they seem to be in contradiction to that. I could say, oh, faith has nothing to fear from science. But the truth was, I was really scared of the theory of evolution. I felt like, oh, danger, that could wreck my whole faith, I could say, oh, God is on our side. But then I saw how that played out politically, and I just suspected maybe that's not always true. In other words, I was in Cana, and my wine had run out, and I needed Christ to do a miracle. I needed new wine. Now, my point here isn't to say, like, oh, well, that particular theology, oh, that is bad wine. That's cheap wine. That's $3 Trader Joe's version wine. My point, it's more to say, that the theology, the image of God, the religious perspective we once had, and maybe, that at one time, that could have been new wine for us. It probably was. Otherwise we wouldn't have been drinking it, right? But over time, it may grow stale. And that's when the Spirit's inviting us to a new perspective, a new theology, new ideas, fresh ways for us to be revived in our Christian commitment and faith. And again, my new wine may be your old wine, right? So this isn't necessarily about getting judgy. It's just about learning to discern when the wine for us has run out. So what I'm going to do in this message, I want to share with you kind of like 5 keys to finding some new wine that can make your palate happy. So key number 1. You got to be thirsty. Be thirsty. I would say the prerequisite for all of this is, of course, that you're thirsty. As the old saying goes, you can lead a horse to water. You can't make him drink. Right? And that's kind of me today. Like if you're not thirsty, I can't make you drink. If you're not curious, there's going to be zero motivation to proceed. But on the other hand, if you are, oh, friends, Jesus does promise us in the Sermon on the Mount, Matthew chapter 7, verse 7, he says, ask and it will be given to you. Seek and you will find. Knock and the door will be open to you. See, if you're thirsty, Christ's promise is that the Spirit will lead you. Like you will find what you're looking for. All right, so that's the first key. Be thirsty. Second key to finding new wine. Be eclectic. Growing up, I was always a little bit mystified as to why old people liked old music. Why they dressed in old ways, decorated their homes in old-fashioned styles. I just didn't get it. I was honestly just mystified. Like, what is up with these people? It's only as, of course, I myself have grown a little bit older that I realized, like, it's because when they started living, that music was cool, right? That style of dress, well, that was modern. That fancy sofa still hiding in its protective cover. Did y'all have a grandparent who had a sofa protected by plastic? Right? Well, that sofa, that was all the rage in 1952. It was like, oh my, that's why it was in plastic. It was like, this is incredible, right? In essence, all you have to do to kind of get out of style is just be frozen in time, right? With your clothing, hairstyle, decor, whatever. And the same thing happens to us theologically. We get locked in. We're like, oh, I'm just a, fill in the blank kind of person. I just like such and such radio or TV preacher, and I've listened to them for 25 years, and I'll listen to them for another 25, and so you could say like, well, I'm just a Richard Rohr guy, or C.S. Lewis is my jam, or it's Jen Hatmaker or Christina Cleveland or The Liturgist, Or sometimes we can even get caught kind of in a certain genre. We don't even maybe know it's a genre, but it is, like conservative kind of white evangelical theology, or even kind of white progressive theology, or it's like Catholic theology, or it's queer theology, or, whatever. But kind of what I'm getting at is I'm saying like, hey, look, It's a new year. Break away. Break away. Get out of the rut. And I should mention, this might be the most important key that I'm going to share with you, because even if you're like thirsty for new wine, but you just keep going back to the same old brands, well, don't be surprised if inspiration is not exactly striking, right? You're going to have to break out of your box, just like a sommelier who wants to develop their palate, right? They got to try a ton of different wine, like 1,000. In essence, if you find yourself in a rut, demotivated in Christian faith, we got to take in some different wine, all right? Take in a diverse range of Christian authors and perspectives, and from different cultures and eras, right? And enrich your palate. All right, so that's second key, be eclectic. Third, be open. Human beings are by nature very bad listeners and very bad readers. I don't mean by that where we read too slowly. I mean, like, before a speaker or an author has even finished their sentence, we've already judged it. They say, like, don't judge a book by its cover. But of course we do. We've judged the whole book based on the cover. And I mean, if it's new, really, for human beings, if it's new, we disagree. We're skeptical. Like, I don't know. That sounds different. If it disagrees with us, makes us uncomfortable, we are already formulating our pushback. So here's the question I want kind of in your mind as you're going on this kind of new wine journey. I want you to ask yourself this. What's the truth in what they're naming? What's the truth in what they're naming? Again, our tendency is to ask ourselves, how are they wrong? How are they wrong? Instead, push yourself by asking, okay, look, even if I don't agree with the whole idea, is there some truth here? What could I learn? Another way to put it would be, eat the meat, spit out the bones. Right? Take in the good, let the rest go. Just because you don't agree with everything doesn't mean it's all worthless. I mean, take just one example. This may be too kind of theologically nerdy, but I just think of like St. Augustine, for example. If you're at all familiar with Augustine and kind of who he influenced John Calvin, and so like in kind of progressive theological circles, Augustine is like, boo, the worst. He's the worst, original sin and all that. Just, can I just say that's idiotic, at least from my perspective. Just like with anyone, you just got to eat the meat, spit out the bones. Like, for example, Augustine's book Confessions, it's sort of like really one of the first memoirs kind of ever written. It's genius. It's genius. It's incredible. Some of the poetry, there's that line about, late have I loved you. I went searching for you, God, in all these places outside myself the whole time. You were there within me. I didn't know it. It's like, I'm like paraphrasing. He puts it beautifully, it's incredible. Like, in other words, even in St. Augustine, there's so much good. So be open, just eat the meat, spit out the bones. All right. Fourth, be discerning. This may sound like it's in contradiction to my previous point, where it's like, be open, and I'm like, be closed, be discerning. But both are necessary, right? This isn't a problem to solve. This is a tension to manage between openness and discernment. In essence, like, you're still going to have to discern, okay, what's meat and what's bones, right? A good rule of thumb here to discernment, or to kind of to discern whether the Holy Spirit's sort of active in really speaking to you, drawing you to something good, is to ask yourself, is this teaching, is this idea, is this perspective, is it leading me towards or away from the fruit of the Spirit? Right? Is it kind of creating some good virtues and character in me? Am I becoming more like Christ? Am I inspired to be sort of, more humble, more loving, more joyful, peaceful, patient, gentle, and so on? Or the opposite? You've probably noticed, for those who've heard a lot of my sermons, and I just quote monks all the time, like, you're probably tired of them, and really anyone who kind of hails from the more contemplative wings of Christian faith, and even other faiths, I'm like all about, I love it. And you might wonder why that is. It's because I have found them personally, for me, right? They are new wine. They are far and away those who are most helpful to produce the fruit of the Spirit in me. I mean, folks like Richard Rohr, wonderful at this. Martin Laird, wonderful. Thomas Merton, Julian of Norwich, Sarah Coakley. Oh, they're incredible. But we got to be discerning, right? We got to learn to, yes, be open and take in, but then also kind of discern, okay, what is meat and what's bones here? All right, fifth, be practicing. What I mean is, like, the ultimate good wine of Christ is actually not words and ideas at all. To put it a little bit differently, we might say the ultimate goal of Christian faith is not orthodoxy, right belief, but orthopraxy, right action. By that, I'm not saying belief doesn't matter. I'm just saying it's not like the end all be all, right? In essence, you can read all the books in the world. You could take in all the great Christian podcasts from every wing of the church. I mean, you can just develop incredible, impeccable taste in Christian theology because, man, you've taken it all in. And yet, if it all remains at the level of information, if you have not love, as St. Paul says, well then, my gosh, the whole journey is for naught. You see, the ego loves to find ways of continuing to hide and kind of run the show. And it can even do that in this way of like, oh, I'm just on a search for new wine, but then it's like an endless search. I just information, research, thinking. But honestly, that's only step one, right? First, we need some new paradigms, new angles, some fresh wine, right? So that by God's grace, step two, the Spirit can then woo us into more beautiful and faithful practice. We'll be talking more about that next week. So you can... Now, you might be thinking to yourself, okay, Brett, this is all very good ideas. What do you want me to do? So this week, here's what I want you to do. Pick one, either a book, like written or audio, or a YouTube lecture, or podcast, or some other long-form media. No TikTok, no. No clickbait articles. Long-form media, from a fresh theological perspective. And I want you to either read it or watch it or listen to it for at least 15 minutes a day until you reach the end. Now, you say, Brett, I don't even know where to begin. Oh, friend, that's why I'm here. I mean, just text me, email me, reach out. But also I'll go ahead and offer you a few suggestions. And these are, of course, these are all books because books are the best. All right, so on the more academic side, I suggest Being Consumed, Economics and Christian Desire by William Kavanaugh. Incredible. A Black Theology of Liberation, James Cone. Life Together, Dietrich Bonhoeffer. Confessions, which I mentioned earlier, by St. Augustine. God, Sexuality, and the Self by Sarah Coakley. I think that's volume 1 in her systematic theology. So those are more academic reads that are that's some diversity there. You got different kind of eras of the Christian faith, different genders and ethnicities and all sorts of things there. Now on the more academic, The Way of the Pilgrim is an incredible work of Eastern Orthodox theology. The Practice of the Presence of God by Brother Lawrence. Julian of Norwich, The Showings. I love the modern translation by Mirabai Starr. We did a series on that, portions of that book last year. The Inner Voice of Love by Henry Nouwen. Bad Theology Kills by Kevin Garcia. All good options if you're looking for some new wine. And church, here's the thing. I just know if you're willing to be diligent, the Holy Spirit's going to lead you. Going to lead you to new life-giving places. Going to lead you to some new wine. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit.